Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Hey everyone, Mike here. Just wanted to jump in real quick and give you a heads up as to what this episode is all about. Since this is the first time you've seen the words Roundtable on an All Ambient podcast episode, the All Ambient Roundtable is a chance for me and a few esteemed individuals to get together and for us to have a bigger conversation from multiple people about a topic in particular, and also for us to just connect, have some fun, but definitely dig into the world of music and creativity in ways that just gets even better when you add more people to the mix. The folks that you're going to hear regularly on the All Ambient Roundtable episodes are, of course, Marshall Usinger of Be Still the Earth, Kirk Smith of We Dream of Eden, and Ben Tatlow of Antarctic Wastelands. The four of us have no shortage of projects together, no shortage of history together, but we've also got a lot of thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the music world that is great to bounce off each other and for us to sharpen each other and make each other better. And we're really excited for you to listen in on the first ever All Ambient Roundtable. Welcome to the All Ambient Roundtable, everybody. I'm already smiling. These guys are so good. Folks, welcome to the All Ambient Roundtable number 1. We are here. I really couldn't be more excited about this, not just because we get to talk more all ambient and all the stuff that relates to that space, but I am joined by 3 incredible guys, and their voices are not new to the All Ambient podcast, and certainly their music and their work is not new to, whoever is tuning into this. We have with us today, we have Ben Tatlow of Antarctic Wastelands, amongst so many other projects. We have Mr. Kirk Smith of We Dream of Eden, and we have Marshall Usinger of Be Still the Earth. Man, this is like a heavyweight in every corner, you guys. Good grief. Man.
Here we are, man. Excited to be talking with you guys. Yeah.
We're doing this. Marshall, you said it right before we hit record. We're all these like ambient producers, and we're quiet and we're introverted and we kind of just hang out in our own corner for a good portion of each day and each week. But hey, we're here together. We're going to talk, and I have a feeling that we'll be able to come out of our shell a little bit because I love each of you guys. It's been fun over the years for us to do stuff together, but even more so, I'm excited about the roundtable concept. I think that there is something to be said for us to introduce a kind of like a subject into the middle, and for us to just kind of spitball around it. And like how, Marshall, how you're feeling about this, Ben, how you're feeling about this, Kirk, how you're feeling about this. I think that there's not only a lot of value in us like bouncing stuff off each other in the sake of us learning from each other, but also like it helps remind me that it's not just my viewpoint, right? And not that I'm expecting us to start butting heads with each other or anything, but like it's really good to have different perspectives and for us to all just be reminded that the world's a little bit bigger than we've limited it to. And so I'm just really excited that we get to dig into that together, and what finer people to do it with.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I'm excited too, man. And I was just thinking, this is actually my first time interacting with Kirk other than via email. So
what?
I'm just happy to be kind of guys.
It's amazing. I'm like,
no
way. Yeah, we're all in one
as
space.
well. I know. But it feels like we all know each other already. But yeah, it's kind of awesome.
Well, that's wild.
I was trying to think if we've ever actually all been on the same email thread, let alone like in the same virtual space.
We've been on some Echoes in the Valley threads, baby.
Yes, that is true.
There have definitely been some emails where I'm like, hey, everyone, and it's you guys plus a bunch of other people.
Everyone.
Yeah.
It is everyone.
But yeah, I'm excited, man.
Man, it didn't feel unnatural at all to start talking in the email thread, though, when it was like, hey, Marshall, hey, Kirk, hey, Ben.
Yeah.
it was like, well, yeah, this just feels right. And I've sort of unceremoniously, unofficially dubbed this the Core 4. No pressure at all whatsoever. But I love the 4. I mean, and not only in the sense of what you guys make as artists and what you're contributing to the world in that sense, but man, I just love you guys as people. And I think that like I've never walked away from a conversation with any of you without being like, man, that's just a good person. And I feel like I'm a better version of me when I'm done hanging with Kirk, with Marshall, with Ben. And so maybe it's just super selfish that we're doing this and I just get to hang out with 3 people that I really, really
appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
All Ambient is pretty fresh, and I'm really excited that this licensing site exists, and I'm really excited about. I say really excited a lot, don't I? But I mean it every time I say it. I promise.
Oh yeah.
I am thrilled about All Ambient living in the world that it does, but it would not be what it is. I think the reason it exists for me is, and Ben, you can speak into it a little bit more, is that like you look at the people who are actually making the art, and it feels so great that when you look down the artist roster, you're like, man, this is a legit group of people who are like actually good humans and people who I would love to sit down and chat with at any moment. And yeah, so I like in that sense, I think the Roundtable is going to be a lot of fun with the 4 of us kind of anchoring it and kind of spitballing through what we talk about on a week-to-week basis. But I think it's also going to be really cool to bring in some friends and to make the table even a little bit bigger and to see who else wants to join the party. So yeah, and I just need to learn to stop talking and I got to take off the interview host hat and put on the hanging with my buds hat because I could not be more happy that it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
How was everybody's day? Was it a good day? This is like a really formal attempt at being informal. So how is everybody?
I'm doing a lot better. I've had some AC issues in my little studio. Air conditioning, the conditioning of the air.
Indeed.
My air's condition has been very poor.
Which is important in Memphis.
Yeah, it's very important in Memphis in the summertime. So, I was definitely feeling the heat.
Is your studio space remind me, is it in an upper level of your house?
No, it's basically, it's a garage that's been reconverted into a studio space.
Awesome.
But that means there's no air conditioning built into the world. So I had this little mini split behind me, but it was on the fritz for a very long time. And that was...
So you have to start bringing a change of clothes.
Yeah, I lost, 3 or 4 pounds. It's great. Like hot yoga, basically, in the studio.
Hey, nice.
Sweaty heads just slipping off the keyboard and the guitar and just fly. Oh, man. May make for some cool tone.
A lot of guitar tuning, that's for sure.
Swampy. Marshall, how are things in Denver? Oh, okay, let's just be official about that. So for the 4 of us, I'm coming to y'all from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. So I believe I'm the furthest north of this little quartet here. Kirk, you're coming to us from
Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, Tennessee. I would do anything to have a Tennessee drawl. I really would. I feel like my vocal cords would perform well as a Tennessean. It's true. Maybe it's just aspirational. Who knows? Marshall, you are coming to us from the great state of Colorado, from its capital, in fact, right? Denver.
You're in Denver?
Yeah, just about 20 minutes south of Denver in Aurora.
I was literally in Denver. Like me and my wife did a trip, like, I don't know, about a month and a half ago or something like that. I wish I would have.
Bro,
I know.
Come on.
He was waving at you the whole time.
We like the area, so we'll be back for sure. But dude, next time we'll sneak away. We'll do a collab. Like, honey, hang on.
Next time, man. Yeah, let me know.
Let's do it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. My wife's favorite band. My wife Caitlin. Best person on the planet. Her favorite band is a little Carolina rock band known as Need to Breathe. And they just released some tickets for the show at Red Rocks.
Oh, Red Rocks, yeah.
Than Red Rocks, right outside of where Marshall hangs. And so, Marshall, we're coming to your neck of the woods next spring. And you better know that we're going to go get some tacos or some There's a killer brunch, a Snooze. Do you go to Snooze? Do you hang out at Snooze?
Oh, I've been to Snooze for a few birthday brunches for sure.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Well, we'll dial in those details.
Yeah, dude. Yep.
Coming to us literally on the other side of the planet.
That's right.
Coming to us from the future, because you totally are, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, you are part of this conversation coming to us from Hong Kong.
That's right.
So awesome. Remind me, how long have you and Anita and your beautiful family, how long have you guys been in Hong Kong now? How many years?
Yeah, almost 5 years now. So it's been quite a while.
Wow. Crazy.
We were just figuring it out. It's actually the city we've lived in as a couple, as a family, longer than anywhere else. So it's
for real?
'cause we've moved around quite a bit, and so even though I grew up in Stockholm, grew up in London or whatever, this is kind of like, in some senses, it's home, because we're here, and we've been here also longer than other places. So
yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Cool.
and you guys have, you've adopted and also so you've birthed and adopted both of your kids. That's kind of a cool.
Yeah.
Makes it official.
Yeah, they're from Hong Kong, so it's kind of, this is where we're at. Yeah.
I love it.
Cool.
So, Ben, as you're enjoying your morning coffee and you're rolling for the day, the rest of us are, if we start yawning on you, just please don't take offense to it. We're all just winding down for the day. And so to anyone listening, if Ben sounds super chipper and the rest of us are like, half asleep, there might be a reason to it. Well, okay. So at the risk of being, trying to put fences around this whole thing, like, you guys, I know that, we've all kind of talked about this a little bit on our thread, and we're going to talk about sort of a singular subject in each of these roundtables. And we'll, there's all sorts of different questions that can come around that. And I'll help moderate it and then shut my mouth and make sure that we're all talking. But I think even more than that, I think that there is real opportunity for us to not just dig into stuff that we think is important. And I'm not trying to devalue that. I think that there's a lot of cool things that we're going to be digging into. But I also want to make room for those who are tuning in to be able to enter into the conversation and ask us questions and maybe stir the pot in a few ways that we wouldn't have thought about ourselves. So those of you who are listening, if you have any questions for the Roundtable group, or there's something that you wanted us to talk about, or maybe just something in the back of your brain that you were scratching that you want to make sure that we heard, you can email us at podcast@all-ambient.com. That's podcast@all-ambient.com, and that will also be in the show notes if you want to go there. But please enter the conversation, because one of my favorite things is being able to hear from people who are streaming the stuff, who are licensing the stuff that each of us create, and to hear just their genuine reactions to it and how the music is just like making their life better. There's a humbling piece to it where you're like, oh, right, this isn't just me, kind of creatively scratching an itch. Like there's some real cool things that happen with that. So I do want to take the conversation bigger than just us. So please feel free to email in your questions, podcast singular at all-ambient.com. I need to speak. I need to enunciate properly. Man, that's why I do instrumental music, right? Like my tongue is just falling out of my mouth, and I can't talk good. No. It's okay.
I can't write lyrics. That's why I do instrumental music. I don't know about you guys, but that's me.
Just can't sing. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, it's true, man. That's for me too. I try to write lyrics, and immediately I look at them and I'm like, oh, those are so awful. Like who? You couldn't hand those to Adele and make them sound good. Like there's no one who can save the lyric. Oh man, yeah. Is that just me and Marshall, or what? Like what?
I dread.
That's a great question, Ben. What made you not sing or write vocal stuff? Well, you have an amazing wife who sings, and I know you do a little bit of stuff with her.
Yeah, I've really tried to let her take the lion's share of any singing. I do not, that's not my number one talent. In fact, I don't think it's my number 10 talent, singing. Yeah. So I'm very happy to let anyone else take that. And if I really have to do some kind of background vocals, I'll kind of do that and then add a lot of reverb. And then it's kind of, ambient vocals.
Of course. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually, this past 2 weeks, I've actually been trying to write songs with words. I did for a long time, and then I kind of stopped because it was just so dang hard. Just, it took so long, and it was drudgery. Huh. And the ambient instrumental stuff, I just enjoy it. It's just like, it's meditative. It's kind of just finger painting and sketching. I don't have to think about like, well, what do I want to draw today? It's like, I just play with the colors until I like what I see. But when you're trying to tell a story, it just, but recently I've been trying to write words. And so we'll see if it ever turns into anything, but it's kind of just like a side project, just to kind of switch gears every once in a while and then come back to what I love.
Totally.
Yeah.
As We Dream of Eden, or just
no,
its
it'll
own
probably
thing?
be something else. I don't want to throw the algorithm some curveballs. I just try to start a new project.
Oh, the algorithm. Yep, I hear you. You ever wonder if like the artists who have done those major swings from like one genre to another? I'm thinking off the top of my head, but like you look at what Willow has done, or you look at what Machine Gun Kelly, or guys where there's just like a drastic shift in their, maybe not their fan base, because their fans might follow them along, but like when they shift from being playlisted or marketed in one genre to another, like I'm curious, I haven't paid attention to that. I'm curious how DSPs have, how Spotify and Apple Music, all that stuff, how they have followed suit with artists like that. Curious.
Yeah. Well, those guys are so big, if you use like Machine Gun Kelly to where, I don't know, what kind of algorithm is it going to throw? Because he already has the backing
think because of the listenership, there's going to be enough initial data to where they can get the data and then make the change that's necessary.
Okay, so what we need to do is we need to build up your listenership to like 10, 12 million monthly listeners. And then at that point, that's when you can start chucking all of your vocal stuff right down the We Dream of Eden lane, and ain't no one gonna drop it.
Yeah, I got this great idea for like, it's like an alt polka type thing, but it's also got bagpipes. Okay. So I was thinking punk rock, bagpipes, polka. I'm sure if I get 10 million ambient listeners, I'll be able to start that passion project.
Bro.
Great.
I'm waiting for the day, man. Mm-hmm. Praying for the day.
I do think there's something about though the algorithmic stuff, especially for like slightly smaller artists, which it's a real shame that you aren't encouraged to explore like multiple kind of genres or styles within, your own artistic expression. Because it really does say, okay, hey, if you have a successful track, which is, kind of sleep vibes, then if you don't keep writing that stuff, you just kind of disappear. You have to kind of go after that one thing. And I don't know, I feel like it encourages artists to not only go after one thing, but also then just set up multiple monikers for very specific styles, which is again kind of the playlistification of people's experience of music, which is not necessarily like a bad thing. But I'm not convinced it's a great thing for kind of artistic creativity.
No, I agree. I will say, sometimes I think about it like this, and maybe let me know what you guys think. Is like, people talk about like the hamster wheel, or like, feeding the machine as far as like doing the thing that is working, right? And like, I think about the hamster wheel and I'm like, but what if the hamster really likes being on that wheel? Like, what if that wheel is just like, this is awesome, I get to ride this wheel again? Then it's kind of okay. Yeah. In the sense of, if I could just wake up every morning and do this kind of meditative stuff, that's a hamster wheel that I'm happy to be running on. And so if that's kind of the way the game's set up at this point, then, there's good and bad to it. And it's kind of like, well, if I want to do something different, I guess I just have to try to build another hamster wheel, and then I can just kind of jump back and forth.
Yeah.
And I think people do that kind of thing. And
I think absolutely. No, I think I'm totally with you. And I think that answer is different for everybody, right? Like, I think I was just talking with a friend to everyone in this circle, Mr. Chris Bartels this morning. And hello, hey, Chris. We were digging into like just the idea of, because, he's got like 47 monikers. Like, I'm kind of kidding, but like the man has, I feel like he's going to go to sleep tonight and there's like 3 more monikers that are going to fall out of his ears like while he's asleep. He is so prolific in multiple disciplines. It is just I'm beside myself. He's crazy and I love it. But we were talking about the idea of, like kind of what you were saying, Kirk, like for him to just essentially be at the place where it's like, I'm going to pick up the project that I want to pick up today. It's like, which hamster wheel am I going to jump on? And I think there are some people who it's like that singular lane, like this is the thing and I'm just going to focus on this. And I think then you look at someone like Chris who I would say he probably has one or two of his monikers that he makes music as that he identifies as like his main ones. But then there's these other things where he's like, I don't know if I want to spin that wheel, but I do want to keep spinning like kind of the greater wheel, if you will. Like I want to keep making music. So let me go try this thing. And I which is great for him. I think I would have trouble feeling like my projects are getting the best of me if I divided myself as thinly as he has. I still have multiple. I mean, even within this circle, I mean, good grief, Kirk, we've collabed on a boatload of stuff. Ben, you and I do stuff as Gray North. Marshall, you and I do stuff as Cloud Chaos, and just all the different lanes that are accelerating there. But I like how all those things kind of feed me. It's almost like I become better at Dear Gravity when I'm working on Cloud Chaos stuff, or I become better at Cloud Chaos when I'm working on Gray North stuff, or I become better at Gray North stuff when I'm collabing with Kirk on a thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like they start to inform each other in a way that I don't think is divisionary, or that it kind of dilutes the potency of them. I think it just makes me better. And then I take that better version of me and just point it at whatever hamster wheel I want to jump on for the next thing. So how about you guys?
I feel like for me, I kind of have to keep like a steady, I don't know, call it like at least like 3 days where I try to remain focused on one particular like sound or style. If we're working on, Cloud Chaos stuff, Mike, or I'm working on an EP with one of you guys, like I do have a tendency, if I'm not like focused enough on what I'm doing that morning, to when you have that many projects, like, yeah, it's so easy to feel a bit scattered on like overwhelm of options. And for someone like me, like I, make quite a bit of, commercial music too. And, for clients and licensing and all that. So I feel like what kind of keeps me most like in rhythm and not being kind of overwhelmed is if I make an effort to say, I'm going to only work on licensing, music for clients, which is more like, wedding video music and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I often find too, like the challenge of like, I don't know if one of you guys send me something that is really like an inspiring track that you're working on, or you send me a, version 2 back and you're super inspired in that moment, right? Then it's really, then it's hard to kind of like, you want to seize that opportunity of inspiration too. So I feel like it's like a healthy mix of those two for me at least, but trying to generally like work on one project or something within the week so that I'm not all over the place mentally and energy wise. But it is, I get easily distracted, especially when I'm like excited about stuff naturally. So,
Yeah, man, the licensing world and, for hire, like that is its own hamster wheel, right? That's a whole nother.
Oh, for sure.
That's a whole different hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Not a bad one.
I think it's also interesting to think about it from, we all have artist projects where, real people, not just playlists, are kind of following us and are kind of excited to hear what we come up with next. God. And I
more and more
I find that incredible. I'm
go.
super grateful for that kind of privilege. But I think there's also then a question you have as an artist with, fans essentially is, do you give them what they want, or like what you've done before, which has been well received? Or do you say, hey, I'm going to take you guys on a journey and I'm going to go and do something a little bit different, which is going to hopefully be surprising in a really good way, or potentially, they don't like it or whatever. But you try to take people on a journey to somewhere new and exciting. And for me, that's the beauty of music and the beauty of art, is the kind of opportunity to show and to share with someone something which is surprising and exciting and positive and makes them feel something. And just kind of going back to the kind of hamster wheel stuff and the playlistification of the streaming world, it's that bit is discouraged. And so finding that balance of, okay, how do we gradually move artist projects in new and exciting ways without going way off piste and suddenly like, hey, here's my hip hop arm of Antarctic Wastelands. It's like kind of
don't
trying
trash talk my hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I don't know. There's a kind of there's a balance to find, and for sure, I don't feel like me personally as an artist has kind of cracked that I have some projects where I'm like, hey, I'm kind of all over the place with this one. And then some where I'm like, this is the lane. This is the lane that I'm sticking in, and just hoping that the algorithms, look kindly upon it.
Yeah, that's just kind of the bigger question for every person who makes art ever, right? Like just that balance of, see, here's something that I personally enjoy and that gives me life, and I love creating this. And then finding that Venn diagram intersection of other people enjoying it as well. And I want to make sure that we don't sound ungrateful for people who tune into the playlists that, that all of us are a part of across all the platforms. And that's a super cool thing. But there is something special to the people who are actually choosing to show up, not to artist number 32 on this playlist, but rather like they're picking Antarctic Wastelands, they're picking Salt of the Sound, they're picking Beast of the Earth, they're picking We Dream of Eden. Like they're picking you. They want more from you. And man, I've been dabbling with that a little bit because there are some things that I want to try out in Steer Gravity, and I don't think they're like massive degree shifts. I don't think it's going to alienate anyone, but at the same time, like I'm kind of bracing for impact and waiting for a few people to be like, man, I've gotten a little bits of feedback along the way where it's like, man, I wish you would still make songs that were 7 minutes long, like just that your whole album was this, and like. There's so much cool stuff that can be done over 7 minutes. Like I'm not dogging that at all, but it just like part of it, the conversation from some of those folks just kind of felt like, hey, like you're not pleasing me anymore in the way that I want you to please me. And that's frustrating for them, like for the listener, it's frustrating. And I look at that and I'm like, is that my goal? Like, is my ultimate aim to appease this person who's in whatever city, in whatever country, like is it my goal to make you a happy listener, or is it my goal to just be really authentic as like the art that is inside of me, and then to hope and pray that it does Venn diagram over with the stuff that I appreciate and other people appreciating it as well? Where do you guys sit on that? Because I'm kind of wrestling with it right now.
So I was listening to the Rick Rubin stuff, and he talks about just at the end of the day, our art, it's a devotion to God. It's an offering. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, there is an audience that we are trying to please. But I think in the midst of that, we have to be true to ourselves, but we can also be considerate to others. Even when we're being true to ourselves, we can be considerate to others. So it's kind of like when you're doing some of the ambient meditative stuff, it's like you don't want to pull people out of a moment, And in a way that's being considerate to the listener. It's like, well, I could do this thing and it would be really cool and sparkle and, be a thing. And it's like, maybe it would be cool, but also does it pull me out of this thing? And if it does, then, so it's an act of service, even though it's an act of being honest. And then there's the offering to God, So I wouldn't say it's just like, it's one or the other. And I think when listeners give us feedback or whatever, then it's like it can be considered, but we're not ruled by it. And at the same time, there's a measure of like hospitality in the music that we're making. And so I think we can carry that and still be authentic and experimental and playful and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Kirk, preaching it, man. Mm-hmm. My goodness. Seriously. Pastor Kirk, thanks, man. Not downplaying any of that at all. I think that's a great reminder for sure. Okay, so as the All Ambient Roundtable episodes kind of find their way, and I'm sure we'll start coming up with other stuff to introduce, and if there are any thoughts that anyone wants to throw at us as far as introducing new segments or new little bits, we're more than happy to take them. But I think it could be fun to play a game called What Song. All that means is that whatever DSP you guys are in, if you're Spotify or Apple Music or wherever, whenever I pull up Spotify, there's always this, like the last song that was playing is in my browser, and it's just waiting for me to hit play and to, pick up on the song again. And so I think we need to play What Song. So we get to tell each other what song is the song that is waiting for you on your music player. And if there is any story behind it, or if you got to justify yourself as to why that song is on your thing, then by all means. But let's play What Song. Who wants to go? Who's going first?
I can
I'm
go
going
first.
first.
Oh, we're both
No,
going first. Oh,
man.
who's doing it? You go. You go.
No, I'm gonna go first. I got
Yes.
this.
Yes.
I was just texting Mike about this album because I've only been listening to the new Explosions in the Sky album, and so the song that is on right now is called Peace or Quiet. It's like middle road of the album, and it's just this simple, clean guitar kind of like starts it out, and I mean it's like their classic sound, it's so God, it's so simple, but it like keeps your attention just throughout the whole track. It gets bigger on later in the track, but this album is like one of my favorite things at the end of the year, of course, is to do my favorite albums of that year, and this album will be on that for sure. I mean, awesome. I love it. It's great. Yeah, man.
Go check out that album, folks. Worth the listen. It's just called End, right? Not even The End. It's just End.
Yeah, it's just called End. Mm-hmm. Which, who knows what that means? I mean, if it is their time, I don't know.
Explosion. Yeah,
I know.
Well, hey.
I know.
It's almost, maybe they gotta pass the baton to a couple guys from Denver and Minneapolis who are picking up a post.
Oh man, no.
I don't know.
No pressure there at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Ben, what song, man? What song?
What song? Well, as I am coming to you from the future, as you said earlier, Release Radar.
Isn't that wild? You get to listen to songs that don't even exist here yet. Like I could search for it 1,000 ways and I can't find it.
That's right. So it's just my Release Radar number, whatever it was when I was playing it last. Hold Me by Arctic Lake. Lovely track. Beautiful vocoder stuff. Yeah. Arctic Lake, beautiful. I don't know if you guys know them, but really, really beautiful music. So highly recommend them. I like them a lot.
We should probably put the what songs in the show notes for sure and just give shout outs to the artists and just say like, thanks for showing up. That's super fun. Arctic Lake. I'm going to check them out. Cool. All right, Kirk, what song?
Oh, no. I was like, okay, and I got to see what I was listening to this afternoon. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go back and I'll scroll through so I can find a cool song. But I was like, no, I'm doing
No. It needs to. It's the fresh one, man. No. I am so hoping that if we do this every time, there's going to be weeks where we're like, oh, wow, that's a cool selection, and somebody's going to get caught red-handed, like at some point in one of the It will undoubtedly happen, and there's going to be a great story behind it. But no, it's no spoiler.
Yeah, no, this is it.
What is the song that populates?
This is a song by Michael McDonald, and it's called
Whoa!
Tears to Come. It's like his latest release, 2022.
What? Nice. He's still making music?
2022. This is
man, I'm ignorant.
Well,
Holy cow.
I couldn't remember who he was. I was doing this course, and this other guy mentioned his voice. He's like, yeah, I did my voice like this guy, Mike McDonald. I was like, I know that name, but I was like, I need to listen to what does he mean by this guy? And so I started listening to him. I was like, oh yeah, that guy. I know him.
Mr. Dewey Brothers, right?
Yeah. So it's his solo project.
And
I was like, has he put out anything new? And he did. So.
And he has. That's awesome. Michael McDonald. You could have offered me a large sum of money and said, you get 50 swings at this.
To guess what it is.
You got to try to name the...
Yeah.
You wouldn't have guessed, huh?
Not even a little bit. Nope.
No.
That's wild. Okay, my turn. I haven't even opened Spotify yet. I'm just going to do it right now because
this is really authentic. This is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this is fun. I just listen to myself. It is the opening track from the Heroes album by a band called The Midnight. They're very much an 80s synthwave, kind of a nostalgia nod. But the lead guy, Tyler, he releases a bunch of stuff in like the indie folk world, but he's also, this singer and songwriter for The Midnight, which he kind of, to be honest, like he's got a lot of power, but he also presents himself not too different from his indie folk thing, but then it just kind of combines right with rototoms and saxophone solos and, just like blaring modular synths and dun, 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 and all that. And it works. The whole thing works. It's called Golden Gate, and it's probably my favorite song they do. But they were just in the Twin Cities last night, and I got to go to their show at the beautiful Palace Theater last night. A couple thousand folks were cheering them on, and they did a great, man, honestly, my tank is full on saxophone solos for the next,
nice.
I don't know, 2-3 years. I'm
I hope so.
Good. I am full of sax solos. They were killer. Every one of them was great. And the best part is like, I mean, they're like, I'm kind of exaggerating. There were like 15 sax. I mean, it was all over the set. And every time the guy came, because he was at kind of a synth station in the back and he had a couple other roles, but when he would come kind of more towards the front of the stage for the big solo moment, every time people would just lose their minds. Like it was the first moment they'd seen him with the saxophone, but like every time it was like, no, we need more. And it just, I was like, wow, you are hitting this genre nod on the head so perfectly, and everyone in this room is on board with you. So well done, The Midnight. Yeah. Well done.
I'll check it out, man. I haven't listened to him, Mike. I think I listened to him once when you sent something to me, but sure. I'm going to listen again.
They're a vibe.
Yeah, dude.
They are a vibe. Cool. You know, that was about as fun as I can't wait to do that on a regular basis. It's going to be great. There's going to be some zingers. I think just recently I changed it, but there was a time when I believe my oldest son, so I have 3 kids, 11 years old. My son Ryland, he's 11. My son Braden is 8. And my daughter Amelia is 6. And I think an old iPhone that we kind of dubbed the family iPod or whatever. I think Ryland started listening to stuff on there, but it was still linked to my Spotify account. So like he'd be listening to stuff and all of a sudden like I just, and sometimes the song would pop up, but more often than not, I would just get like really surprised at the end of the year when it's like, here's what you listen to all year long. And it's like, Family Force 5 and like all this like Blair, you know, that's just the worst. Like Skillet and I'm not against these bands, but I'm like, wow, okay, you have like ruined my algorithmic presence in this DSP. Like I am not going to be fed anything that I probably want to hear, but you know what? If that means that my son can be happy, then cool. And now he's got his own Spotify, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm willing to bet that one of these days it's going to be like a song from Lyle Lyle Crocodile or something that's on there that's like, yeah, that was my daughter.
Dude, no, I take like so much pride in my end of the year Spotify Wrapped that like you have much more grace with your children, because I like if I go on Wrapped and like VeggieTales is on there, I'm going to be very upset. So like they're not allowed to listen to my
you guys,
you're messing up my account.
You can't touch that. No.
YouTube Music. Go to YouTube Music.
Exactly. Do not touch my Spotify. Thank you.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I suppose it's time to get to the main topic at hand. We've been rolling for a while. Guys, let's talk a little bit. I know the listeners clued in on this with the title of the podcast episode, but let's talk a little bit about our friend AI and how our friend AI, friend is air quotes, how AI, which is going nowhere, like it is here to stay. It's going somewhere, don't get me wrong, but it is not leaving anytime soon. It's here to stay. I am really curious what sort of thoughts you guys have had about the introduction of AI into the world of music. And when I say introduction, I don't want to make it sound like this just happened yesterday. Like I know ChatGPT really kind of catalyzed the whole discussion that's sort of happening around the world. But in a lot of senses, there's been AI around for years and decades. And we'll talk about that. But I'm really curious what you guys are processing through. And I've got a couple bullet points I want to make sure we hit, but just like as a general topic, what's exciting you guys? What's maybe kind of freaking you guys out a little bit? Like, let's just crack open the AI in music conversation. Anyone who's scared, who's happy, who's in between, who's fearful for their entire compositional experience to be sucked away by a thread of write something that sounds droney and pretty, but doesn't bore me to death and is perfect for meditation and sleep. And then all of a sudden off goes the algorithmic world of that. And how close did they get to creating something that one of the 4 of us or one of the, all the brilliant people in our space would have created with our bare hands.
Just write me something that sounds like We Dream of Eden.
Exactly.
There is a real risk, I think, with AI that, I know that there are various laws, et cetera, which are trying to say, hey, it's not allowed to be trained on copyrighted content and all the rest of it. But in reality, how likely is it that it's not going to be? It's most likely to be trained on the vast majority of copyrighted music out there. And it's just getting better and better. And I feel like there's on one hand a real risk that there's just going to be so much, essentially good enough quality music out there that's a risk to a lot of playlist style placements that exist within the Spotify, Amazon Music ecosystem. That said, I do think that there's an opportunity for this to almost have the opposite effect, where fans and listeners, the ones who care about good music, which I think is the majority of people, who are like, hey, no, I really want someone to be behind the stuff that I am listening to. I care about that person's story. I care about that person's experience of the world and what they have to say and kind of how that comes across, even in instrumental music. And so I think as artists, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, but it means that, hey, you have to be a really human artist, not just on social media, but also through your music, and bring people along, bring actual fans and actual listeners to your music because they are choosing you. And I feel like that's kind of best case scenario, that it kind of makes this shift and more people want kind of again to be fans of actual music. And then sure, the Deep Sleep playlist on Spotify is AI generated, fine. But then some of the people who are like, hey, we just want to listen to Dear Gravity because his music just makes me feel something that I don't feel with other music. That's a good thing.
Well, I have a question about, this is something I quite honestly am not super just familiar, all the ins and outs of like what's currently happening, like what's currently being practiced with AI stuff. And I mean, like as artists, I kind of like, not that it's AI, but I feel like I almost draw a comparison to like using something, like Output Arcade or Splice, or using samples regularly to make ultimately, music that we're calling original, that we're making. So I guess my question / like, where are you guys at with this is do you kind of see this AI thing as something that is just coming into the world of streaming and sort of like taking over these things that we're doing? Or like, is there a risk of artists, like us who are being like, I want to create this song that sounds like We Dream of Eden, so I'm going to like create this soundscape based with AI stuff and then, add my own sprinkles on top of it kind of thing. So is that kind of making sense? Or like, what's the...
Yeah.
Is there kind of a line or something there with just what's being done with the whole AI thing currently?
Well, I think, and this is the fun of the roundtable, because I think, certain... from month to month, as we keep doing these, there are certain levels that some of us are going to be more informed than others, and just have whatever thoughts we have. I think that the topic of AI in music is kind of more so in the creation sense. I know that there's a lot of other angles to it, like the mastering of it and like who holds the copyrights and stuff. But just AI in general is kind of a funny discussion because, man, like in a lot of senses, it's been around for decades, right? Like when you think about what a preset inside of a virtual instrument or a synth, I mean, that is AI saying, hey, I'm going to tweak all these knobs and get this oscillator and this filter into the right spot so that you don't have to sit here for 45 minutes dialing in a new patch. You're just going to hit a button and poof, you've got the new thing. So like we've like in that sense, we've been using AI for a very, very long time. I think the interesting kind of gray area question to me, is along the lines of like which ones are maybe more going to be social, like which pieces of AI are going to be more socially acceptable to use, and we still kind of claim as like this is my signature piece, but I did use this tool to kind of help me along the way. And man, some of the AI stuff is super fun and creative. Like another thing that Chris Bartels and I were monkeying around with, because we've got a fun project that we're goofing on in a genre that neither of us have ever touched before, and it's going to be wild. But we started feeding we were just talking about how none of us really consider ourselves vocalists. That's great. We started feeding our own vocals to, I forget the name of the AI site, but you can like, hey, I want The Weeknd to sing this lyric, and you just upload it and poof, it sounds like The Weeknd or like Adele or like Ariana Grande or whoever. You can just kind of tweak it into place. And it's not perfect, but the fact that this early in and that sort of thing is available, I think is both creatively interesting, but then also, it does make you start to question like, well, is this now something like I'm clearly using this within my own circle of projects, but what about the person who's like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to market it as a new song by The Weeknd? And whether that's a money grab or could be a potential attempt to harm the image of an artist and, kind of create confusion around that. I think that's where it starts getting a little crazy for me. And to be completely fair to everybody in the circle, I love dystopian movies. Not like Star Trek science fiction, but I'm like the world's about to fall apart and Skynet's going to take over everything kind of sci-fi. Like I am all in on that stuff. Not as like a devoted believer to it, but I think the conversation in that space is fascinating. So I probably need to shut up because I could just keep going on for a long time on all the implications to that. But yeah, it's equal parts exciting to me, but also like, what the heck are going to be the ramifications of that and how I don't need to direct the whole conversation, but the like causing confusion or releasing music as somebody else. I mean, I was listening to a podcast episode a while ago about deepfakes, like audio deepfakes, and the president, this may have been so long ago that it was actually still a reference to in the US, President Obama. So I think it may have even been pre-2016, 2017, whatever that was. But the idea of releasing something into the world that has somebody of that type of, political stature or of power saying something that clearly they didn't actually say, but, the deep fake AI is strong enough and hardly discernible from them actually saying it that you can just, have them say whatever they want. And so it's either going to be something that everybody is terrified of and there's going to be all these lockdowns everywhere, or it's going to be so good that no one's going to believe anybody anymore. And it just kind of like brings everybody down to square one. And it just it almost, by everything able to be so perfect, it just makes everything basic all over again. And we just kind of have to start building from ground up. Now I need to shut up for sure. you do.
I feel like it's something that kind of is going to age us a bit too, as like, we're, all of us are older, as far as I know. We're all in our 30s at least. I feel like this is going to be one of those things where younger artists and musicians are like kind of grabbing a hold of and not only learning how to like use it very effectively, but also, really like stuff like this comes out and it's just kind of overwhelming, right? As far as like all these new instruments are coming out all the time for us. And a lot of the times it's for me, like it's so comfortable to use what we use and we know that we know what we're good at. And I feel like maybe there will be effective ways that we could use something, in the AI scope as it like grows to where it might be able to help, I don't know, like make music theory more understandable or like, you kind of easily digest information or things like this. But I know it's like, it can seem so daunting. And I feel like it's just going to be something where there's different, what's the genre called? I think it's called hyperpop. I don't know if you guys know this stuff at all, but it's like, just this very fresh sound that is quite popular. I mean, it's not in my algorithm by any means, but when I hear this stuff, I'm kind of just like, wow, like these, you have guys that are 16, 18 years old making this stuff that just sounds incredible, just pure digital sounding music, but you can't not just turn it up and be like, man, it sounds so good. Yeah. So I kind of like with it in the conversation of AI, I feel like it's going to be something that probably younger artists who are eager to kind of take hold of how they can really make that an effective tool. I'm kind of quite interested to see how they'll work that into their own compositions and things like that.
Absolutely. It makes me think of how hip hop started. They were grabbing source material generated from other places and then taking it and using, and people were like, when they first started doing that, these labels were like, what, can they do that? Like, is that, and they took the one snare. They took a snare from this record. They took a kick from this record. They took a bass line from this record, and then they put out a record, and they kind of they started figuring out how to figure out the legality of everything as they were doing it, but they weren't thinking about that when they were doing it. They were just like, this snare sounds way better than anything else I can get, and I'm going to use it, And so it makes me think of that with AI as a source material. It's going to do things that we haven't even imagined yet. And so that's exciting, and people can figure out, the lawyers will figure out how to make sure everybody gets paid. At some point, it's probably more Wild West right now. But the other thing I was thinking about was I heard someone say that when photography first came out, when people first started taking pictures, people would say, this is ridiculous. How could that person be an artist? Like, they literally just took a photo of this thing and now it's art. It's like, because painters were making art, photographers didn't make art. Painters made art. Sculptors made art. And so the idea of taking this piece of technology and just pointing at something was outrageous to people at the time. And so I think that it's probably a similar sentiment at this moment, but I've tried to dabble in some of that stuff, and like a lot of the stuff I do doesn't come out good because I don't know how to communicate, and I'm limited by my imagination, and so I think even when there's artificial intelligence, there's a nuance of communication and an expanding of imagination that gives life to these things. And so there's going to be the people that just say, yeah, do this and spit out this. And like you said, Mike, it's just everyone's going to have it. And so it's just going to be base. But to the people who really can communicate and imagine things that people haven't thought of and get that to be generated, now people that's going to come across somebody's eyes or ears, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. I know, So I think the idea of communication and imagination that is going to help artists who are using it to really stand out.
Yeah.
I think one thing which is interesting, kind of linking to what you're saying, Kirk, is kind of trying to figure out, throughout history, music has kind of been a conduit for people's, human experience, and it's organically grown, and then genres have combined to make new genres, but it's all been a kind of reflection of who we are as human beings and what's going on in the world. Maybe it's been in response to, a war or a political issue or whatever it is, or just kind of human emotion. And I know that, of course, AI can mimic that kind of thing very effectively. But I think by kind of ceding control, for example, like AI lyrics, they're really, super easy and super good to kind of easily come up with. But by ceding that kind of control, something is being lost there. And when you kind of have that at a really large scale across, let's say everyone was doing it, then what are we losing as a human species almost in terms of our art? With photography is a great example. People were still taking pictures of real things really that were happening. It was just kind of a shortcut from painting something to taking a photo of it. Here, I feel like it is that, but it's also something a little bit different because we're not just taking a photo of something that exists in nature. We're kind of saying, hey, come up with something new. And we're giving the ownership of that creative progression to something that quite honestly, we don't understand fully. It's kind of like, do we want it all to tend in that direction? Or do we want to have, as human beings, that control over kind of our, on an aggregate basis, a control over kind of where we go musically, artistically, societally? I don't know.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think even just hearing you kind of chew through it that way, Ben, I think one of the things that we were talking about it in a sense quite a bit earlier, but at the end of the day, like, let's be kind of selfish about this for a second. Let's almost forget the listener and just go back to like the creator, the composer, the producer, the musician. What if I didn't want to toil over a melody for a few hours, something that I felt was going to really fit a piece? So I was just like, hey, write me a melody for this. It's 8 bars long and do that. And there are plugins. You can just hit like, generate me an 8-bar melody, boop, and then it just prints out the MIDI and you can chuck it into whatever plugin you got. Like, it's fine. It exists. That's cool. That exists. But like, does that then mean that me toiling over a melody for a few hours is now a wrong choice to make, or that it is like, why would you do that if you can just like print it out over here? I think there is something about just the actual practice of being an artist that will continue to be valuable, certainly to the people who consume it, to the listeners, to the viewers, to to all that. But I think there's a part of it that we need to ask ourselves, like, what part of this is important to me? Like, what part of this process is something that I still kind of feel like I need to touch. And man, like, shortcuts are cool, workflow efficiency is cool, but I also don't want Dear Gravity to not feel like Dear Gravity. You know what I mean? there's so much more behind that I suppose we could dig into. I'm already feeling like this AI thing is like a 4-part conversation because we're deep into this episode already time-wise, and I feel like we've got a lot more to go. But yeah, I'm kind of, trying to ask the questions about, as an artist, like what pieces of this are important for me to do as a habit, is the art of creating.
Well, I wonder if there's something that will, I think, Ben, you mentioned this earlier, but just like the aspect of human touch and human performance, and as artists are creating pieces of music, I am just quite interested to see how that will translate coming from something like a melody, Mike, where maybe I write a much simpler melody, but I play it on my synth and it's not perfectly quantized. And I think there's something about that it's kind of like part of the experience of listening to music in a way where there's a human element about it. And I am curious to see if that could quite possibly be worked into what AI is doing, I'm sure. And that's kind of above my head at this point. But I think of it like similarly to when I first started learning to produce music. I had a bud tell me, literally try and just do something with your hands, do a hand clap in a song, do like literally just strum a guitar into your computer microphone to give your piece some life that is not just coming from your computer instrument, right? Like if you can just do one thing you're adding to what you're creating, that will likely translate, for the most part. And so I'm just kind of curious if it's like, again, like I'm sure there's so much more intricate details to what's happening in AI at this point, and there will be, but I do think there's something still, there will still be something important to be said just about what translates as humans creating art for people that like Dear Gravity specific music. We're listening to what you created, Mike, versus something we say that sounds like you. I'm hopeful, of course, that will stick around for a while.
And in the end, I think it comes back to what Ben was saying is there's going to be parts of the industry and a whole that are going to shift when they can go to this site and type in a prompt and give them some money and get the thing that they want to use, whether it's for a business to business thing or whatever, and they want to go just get this thing off the shelf and it's made for them. I feel that's going to happen. But what's not going to go away until we all go away is there's going to be people who want to listen to art, or they want to connect with art made by other people. That's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so I think our responsibility is to pay attention to the shifts that happen in the industry that maybe we might be chasing to have some other revenue or whatever, to be able to do our stuff and be like, okay, well, this door is going to be half filled by AI generated things. And okay. And then to press into the things that connect us to other humans. And the world is massive. The planet is huge, and there's so many people to where it's, even if AI becomes like a front runner in all these different genres, there's still going to be enough people that love art.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I look at, Marshall, like you've got a half dozen vinyl on your wall behind you.
Yes. Well, I think, those are mostly inserts that come in the vinyl selections. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Like we're not going to be hanging vinyl inserts on our wall from the latest AI album or whatever. Like you guys are right. Like there is just something about that human experience. And I was listening to another podcast. I think it was Rob Lowe's podcast. He was talking with one of his, I believe his son is a scriptwriter, and a couple scriptwriters were talking to each other about the concept of how, like, within 3 to 4 years, they're kind of expecting that you would be able to drop a script in front of a table of actors and actresses for them to read through, and it will be virtually indiscernible as to if AI wrote that script or not, and which is wild when you think about it. Yeah. But at the same time, they're like, okay, like with that, it is probably inevitable at some point that there will be a lot of people that consume this stuff. Like it will be good enough. It will be content that's good enough. Okay, cool. That's great. And it has a place, there will be people who will tune into that. But there will be people who still love and appreciate the art and who still have a passion to create it and to bring it to the world for people who are consuming it. Kind of what you were saying earlier, Kirk, about considering the audience and being thoughtful and mindful of that relationship. It will become maybe not a premium experience. I mean, like, it'll be whatever it is, but it will certainly be a bespoke experience. It'll be something that is an elevated experience to still engage with human created music, human created movies, and human created art and all that. And it's kind of a fascinating way to look at it, but it does give me hope in the sense of like, our jobs aren't going anywhere, right? Like, stuff might shift around and this and that, but like, we still love what we do. It's, you know, the rise of AI in music does not all of a sudden make me want to create stuff less, right? It's like, oh, they've got that covered. Okay, fine. Like I've got just as much of a passion for it. And there will be, and you know, whatever the audience looks like or whatever, wherever it lands, like, I got to trust that the right thing's going to happen. And I just need to be obedient to the craft. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how much of a bespoke, you know, elevated experience it is to listen to human music.
And if it shifts how we approach our art and our kind of music creation, you know, if we are either by choice or are forced to take, you know, a tack and say, hey, this is how that's going to come together. This is how you experience my music, you know, because you say it doesn't change our jobs as artists. And on one hand, it doesn't. But on another hand, if let's take Spotify as an example, if 50% of Spotify revenues ultimately get sidetracked into an AI bot and, you know, all of that stuff, and, you know, that they basically takes 50% out of the pie, well, that potentially does impact us as artists. So then how do we shift to kind of grow that pie in a way that kind of appeals to listeners and fans, as exactly as you're saying? But I think that may be a conversation for another time.
I'm not losing wind, but I also know it's like for me and Kirk, it's like 10:35 right now.
You're yawning. I saw you yawning, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, I just now had to like get back into my not feet kicked up position, and I'm just like, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try to not feel a little deflated that we aren't necessarily landing the plane on, you know, the AI in music stuff yet. But to be fair, if we were to land the planes, like, I don't want to make it sound like we think that we know all the answers or that, okay, well, we've solved that. Okay, on to the next world problem. Let's do that. I get it's going to be an ongoing thing, but I know even hearing your guys' perspectives, like, it gets me to approach it and think about it in a healthier way and in a way that just kind of draws you back to, like, I'm here to be obedient to what I've been called to do and to create, to make this art, you know, for the audience and the audience. And that will not change regardless of if the role shape shifts in what happens over the course of the next handful of years, handful of decades. Like, that mission doesn't change in as much as maybe little parts will a little bit. But yeah, it would be hard pressed for me to see 30 years from now that Marshall and Ben and Kirk are no longer making music because AI shoved them out. That is not a reality. That's not a reality I want to live in, but it is not a reality that I think would ever exist. And it'll be interesting to jump on this train and see where it takes us. Well, speaking of that, I suppose we should just find a spot to end this. Not that I want to end it, but to respect everybody's time, and also the fact that for those who are listening, like, we're over an hour and we're thrilled that tagged along for this whole thing. But man, as far as the fact that the all ambient roundtable exists, that makes me really happy. I'm glad that this is a thing. And man, Kirk, Ben, Marshall, it's not only great to do this last hour plus together, but just to do this thing together and to create together. It's really great. And yeah, I'm excited for what the next roundtable discussion's gonna bring, what we're gonna crack open. Yeah, very optimistic for just how much fun that's gonna be. And seriously, listeners, please feel free to send in your questions. Feel free to just anything that you're kind of looking for us to perhaps chew through as a group, or maybe an individual question. Send it to podcast@all-ambient.com, and we just might grab your question and chuck it into a future episode. So please do so. Kirk, thanks for being here. Marshall, thanks for being here. Ben, thanks for being here.
It's great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you again for listening to the All Ambient Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time. I hope that you are too. Can't wait to see you then, and until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping that this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. See you next time.